SBC Media.
Brazil, a global economic powerhouse, deeply passionate about sports, and now home to one of the hottest markets in gaming. And we're giving it the full SBC treatment. Join industry leaders, market experts, and all the major players in the country for 3 days of content, exhibition, and epic networking at the first ever SBC Summit Rio.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
The year is starting to wind down, so before we forge ahead into 2024, it's time to pause and reflect on what we've learned about North American sports betting in 2023. Who were the winners and losers? What were the trends? What were the takeaways? And what do we know about the sports betting landscape now that we didn't know in January? We'll discuss all that and probably even a little bit more on today's episode of iGaming Daily. I'm Jessica Welman, editor of SBC Americas, and I am joined by Betsson Sportsbook's B2B commercial director, Lance Agostino. I say a little bit more because I feel like we're about to have a conversation taped that is usually just what you and I talk about at conferences.
Yeah, that's right. I always enjoy catching up with you at the conferences. I think this is probably the year, I think you captured it right away with the winners and losers. This seems like the year where the winners and losers are really beginning to separate. There seems to be we've been on a trajectory of the winners being in the lead, but I think now it's starting to have real separation.
I'm curious what you think. I think we tend to talk about it as a duopoly, but for me, it seems like we're kind of falling into 3 tiers of sorts of sports betting, but I'd be curious how you think the market has kind of shaken out.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I think certainly the rapidity with which the market concentrated, I don't think, we certainly didn't expect when we were doing business planning 2 and 3 years ago. And even when I was jumping into sports during the PASPA stuff, I think it's fair. We have, some positive EBITDA finally from the big, top 4, the top 4 that everybody knows. Suddenly there's some challengers coming into the space. There's been some, even in the mid-tier, most notably like an RSI, a Rush Street, seems to be, hammering out a respectable place in the mid-range with some other multi-jurisdictional operators. And then there's probably everybody else, and tier 3 and below, and folks that have kind of a small little niche, but also some really fun things as well. I mean, I think one of the things that we were going to highlight is the differentiation for guys that are currently in tier 3 and where they can lead to in future years. So I think it's probably a fair assessment is we're getting into kind of a 3-tiered structure right now, and the amount of money and technology and staff and things. Certainly when we do our own customer profiling over at Betsson, we think about things probably as a 3-tier structure. That's fair.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of kind of market consolidation for the first time too, where people are throwing in the towel. Just this week, Kindred exited the North American market, including Ontario, which we haven't seen a lot of people really leave that space yet. We had Fubo and Maxim and PointsBet get purchased by Fanatics. Do you envision that consolidation continuing in 2024?
Yes, in a short. I think one of the more interesting aspects of the consolidation, a group like Fubo, Maxim, those groups fundamentally were still only in sports, and I think everybody is pretty aware now that sports only is a tough business. You need to have casino. Betsson globally, for instance, right, we're 75-ish% of our global revenue is casino, and we're only 25 sports. So I think everybody appreciates casino. I think what's been more interesting is what just happened with Kindred. And I know Unibet had been rumored to be, I think they'd already pulled out of a couple markets, and there were some rumors that they were going to be exiting or looking for an acquisition anyways. But you look at where they were in New Jersey, in Pennsylvania, where I think they were, I'm sure they were doing at least a reasonable handle on their casino product. And then they were in Ontario, all markets with iGaming, which the consensus suggests that if you have sports plus iGaming, then there's a better path to profitability. So I think that's one that we're certainly digging in on and evaluating, because I think the report has always been, give us more iGaming, and that'll allow smaller operators to sustain a business model. And then you look at a group like Unibet that just completely pulls out and says, even with iGaming in these markets, and I appreciate there's other factors, tax rates in Philadelphia and just some market saturation in Ontario, but they were effectively an operator with, given the tools that the market says are needed to sustain a business model. So I think that's one that's certainly worrying for a group like Betsson as we think about the operators that we are looking for to sustain. I think Win was certainly an interesting one just because of how popular Win is. That was one that kind of shook us up because they had just gone through the massive technology migration. So, and I know, by the way, I had friends at both organizations. I don't know what the redundancy message has been, but or the fact that they're going to be laid off. I don't know if they can be pre-Christmas, post-Christmas, but I hope those folks over there land somewhere rapidly. A lot of smart people at both organizations. But yeah, I think if you had to put an over/under, I think we have it at 1.5. Would be for a relatively large group to also fold up shop in 2024. So I'm probably under. There's probably one more that's in probably 3+ states that probably is looking to sell or be acquired in 2024 for sure.
Yeah, Win too. That also, just the struggles they've had in Macau, I think don't get talked about as much. Like, you need such a runway in online gaming and need so much capital. And I don't know how much the fact that their Asian business was really strongly impacted by COVID in a way that Caesars and BetMGM weren't, made some of the impact on that as much as Win raised eyebrows for all of us. That's always my point of caution with it, but I don't know if you agree or not.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Macau was basically bounced back pretty significantly by now. I know when they were probably announcing the withdrawal. I think I don't know about the Macau finances or the Asian finances versus what they were.
I just know they were really hurting, for a couple of years. So
yeah. I guess for us, more surprising is we were in the procurement process. I mean, we had been in pretty deep discussions with the Win Group, and just like everybody. I mean, if you were a technology provider, you were probably talking to Win. That's not a surprise. I think what was surprising to us is just they launched the new app, and then 2 weeks later they announced they're going to close up shop. I mean, that's just a big head scratcher.
They're keeping a handful of states,
sure.
To your point, Michigan is one that you would think should be a very easy, pardon the pun, win for anybody. But I think that they are evaluating the sports side versus the casino side in that state. So we'll see. Certainly, too, what we've seen this year is some of these players that thought they needed to consolidate their tech stacks and own all of their own tech have reevaluated that as well. You saw Bally switch back from its own platform to Kambi. I think certainly for Betsson, you would probably argue there's a lot to be said for outsourcing your tech, and people kind of learned that lesson this year, right?
Yeah, certainly. One of the other things back to Kindred, obviously I believe they were on Pala and Kambi, and then ultimately Pala gets bought, which was their platform provider, and then they bring over their in-house tech stack. So maybe it was also a combination of the amount of money. I know our own platform that we operate internationally is quite an expensive endeavor. So bringing over their own platform, changing platforms regularly, similarly with Churchill, somebody that was on SB Tech and then having to migrate off after DraftKings bought them. So I think for these small groups that are having, at the very worst, having to change technology is never good, even if you have your own or somebody else. And I think for a group like ours, or we look at groups that are trying to build their own, and our argument is usually, why do that, especially to start? Like, why spend that kind of capital, the engineering that you're going to need? I appreciate you want to own your own, but why not lease it for a little bit? There's certainly a lot of elements, how modular the technology is now. There's a lot of elements you can take on over time and bring more and more in-house. You could staff up more regularly. You be a little more nimble. So I think especially because a group like Fubo, I think bought a company. Bally had bought Betworks, and then ultimately they go back to Canby because they want to move more rapidly, have a more compelling product, get into more states, and be at parity. I think so. I think there's been this push. I think it was an early push. Everyone wants to own the technology stack. And I think that's still a compelling argument. But for groups where your digital arm is not a core competency, like a group like Bally, like retail, you want to be a casino provider, why hire 100 staff to build your own technology stack? At least in the first iteration, why wouldn't you at least want to take something out there? So I don't know that there's a lot out there that still would migrate off. Obviously, anybody that's big, the big four are already on kind of their own already. So the ones that are out there still, most notably RSI probably has the biggest handle, I believe, that's not on their own. So they could potentially move in-house. We like the compelling argument as more and more interests come in is, why not lease it for a little bit? We'll help migrate off. And then you can use your own as you find a way to acquire players, which is probably where your core competency is if you're entering the space.
Yeah. We'll see too, 2024, if you get a state like Oklahoma or Minnesota where you have a bunch of tribes who have maybe not been in this space, look and see what kind of tech options they go to. Before we think too much about what I'm going to say is kind of a dismal landscape for new states in 2024, let's take a second to talk about the markets that have gone live in 2023. You had Ohio launching at the beginning of the year, Massachusetts not long after it. My home state of Kentucky, we are still overwhelmed with ads from launch. How did those kind of launches go this year, in your opinion?
They look good. I mean, the industry is strong. I mean, we from day one, at least from retail, obviously a group like Churchill had in Kentucky had retail on lock and ready to go day one. Mobile, I believe we had 6+ operators on day one for mobile in Kentucky. So there's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of really good, talented people. There's a lot of good technology out there. There's a lot of competent organizations. If you look at when states were launching back in 18 versus 19, so I think the industry's strong. There's some good technology. There's good organizational structure. There's good regulation finally, and tax structures and regimes, and enough folks to support all that. And I think when we were doing modeling in, probably one of the most interesting things that I've seen, and we'll see what happens in Kentucky because of a group like Churchill and bringing butts to seats during the race days. We always modeled retail as always a small percentage of the industry, period. Less than 10%. And I think it's even less than that in a place like Ohio, where they spend so much time on these Type C and licenses and trying to help with other organizational structures that already have some kind of lottery terminal or gaming terminal in their bars. And all of that really has not panned out in favor of those small establishments in terms of retail guidance because of the proclivity and just how widely available mobile is. So I think, looking forward, if you have more states with that, I'm thinking about a place like California where it has a lot of interest on retail and what that means to drive folks to retail. I think there's probably going to have to be some rethinking of that just because of how poorly those performances have been because mobile went at the same time. But overall, I think the states, more states the better. Everyone's achieving, especially the big guys, are finding a way to make money. And then the last thing I'll say is what we've heard as we kind of continue to evaluate the market is a more of a correction in terms of market access deal. Of course, we're never really in favor of market access deals. We think it's kind of silly to have to pay some third party to operate that's not really involved in the operation whatsoever, other than to have the license and sub-license out. But we're hearing more and more about a correction in terms of the fees applicable, the revenue shares, the share of gaming, the responsibilities of both parties. So I think because there are more states and back to our original note about consolidation and market exits, I think there's been a better opportunity to get into more places at a more reasonable at a more reasonable economic value for the groups that are actually going to operate.
Yeah, it was a bit surprising that, North Carolina legislature kind of came back and retroactively glommed on that you need a team deal with it. I know many smaller operators were frustrated with that change, but you look at Massachusetts and Kentucky in particular. Massachusetts really stood out to me because I remember them thinking they were going to get like 24 applicants. At the beginning of the year, they really thought they were going to have more applicants than licenses, and that ended up not being the case because it was just, it's a decent tax structure there. It's 20%, I think. You can't do promo credit deductions, but as the RSIs and others of the world evaluate, it's a state that doesn't look to be doing online casino anytime soon. And I think that kind of has impacted a lot of what these mid-tier and smaller operators are looking at when they go into a new state. Kentucky, another one, like, we're not doing land-based casinos anytime soon, so I doubt online casino on the horizon.
Yeah, that's why, again, back to folks that have kind of been patiently waiting, to give a Bet365 and not to get myself in trouble with these market access deals, but you're right. For a group that's not, and I think there's so few winners in the market access deals. If you get a market access deal with one of the big four, you're golden. But why does the rest of the market have to pay the same rate as the big four? Because that's a going rate for whatever skin is in those particular states. When we're not going to sustain more than 10% market share. So I just think the model for market access deals and having to go through a third party just under skin is broken. But the last thing I'll say is it's been positive for groups that have sat and waited. So you think about Bet365, you think about our own trajectory for Betsson and what we might do or what we continue to evaluate is that there's better deals now. Sure, we missed the first wave and those customers have been acquired. But I think there's always going to be a fight for customers, whether that's through promos or technology or other offerings. And there's a lot of value. There's a lot more value anyways in the market now than there was a couple years ago.
We've also seen, you mentioned this earlier, that obviously we have kind of the big second movers, the Fanatics and Penn kind of giving another shot with ESPN Bet. But we're seeing kind of niche operators come in with a defined value proposition that's a little bit different than what you've seen from other sports books. I have not been the kindest on this podcast to better in terms of its results, but that's one that comes to mind. You've got the exchange model that we've seen with Sportrade and Profit. Now that we're growing, I mean, even Pennsylvania is still just did a record handle. It's still growing, even though it's an older market. How much room is there for somebody to come in and say, like, okay, maybe we're not the best all-around sports book, but we offer this particular thing? Do you think that's enough? There's enough market share to succeed that way?
I think there's enough there to get investors plugged in because you're coming in with a differentiated product in a very high TAM, total addressable market, North America. So, and for investor pitches, I think there's certainly enough there to say, we think they're missing this segment of the audience and therefore give us millions of dollars at a ridiculous valuation in order to be a challenger brand. But also at the same time, we certainly believe in micro betting. Everybody has to have a micro betting strategy. I don't know that Better specifically succeeds, but Better as coming in and trying to make betting easier and more intuitive to what's happening in the gameplay. This idea of mirroring sports bets with the motion that's happening, on the field or court or pitch. We certainly believe in. However, that seems to be a product that eventually everybody will have some version of. So I don't know how long of a sustained differentiation they have to really compete on value. And then, as you noted, their value or their actual handle is not matching up with what they thought. I think the initial pitch was, because I think a lot of core bettors still just want money line spread, totals, live betting in game. So I don't think those products can probably sustain the market on their own, but certainly as a new element to bring in a differentiated player segment to couple with the way that people are currently betting, I think that's probably, and that's been clear. I think Better is going to offer more and more markets soon and more core markets.
They
To
pivoted
meet.
very quickly. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it was a
Yeah.
matter of like 3 weeks before they were like, oh, by the way, we have traditional markets, full game, this sort of thing. We're going to
Yeah.
offer some other things in addition to micro betting. And, they've said too, they understand that being in 2 states, you really can't get the liquidity that you necessarily need. And the focus is going to be on this DFS product, Better Picks, until they grow a bit of a consumer following.
Right.
We'll see how it goes. I mean, we talked about micro betting, but I think the other kind of bet du jour is these parlay plus same game parlay kind of products. They've been around for a year or two, but it seems like 2023 was the year where we really saw, I mean, as someone who writes the revenue reports on SBC Americas, you could just see the market jump in hold on operators that were performing well with this. Is that sustainable? Are we going to continue to see double-digit hold and same-game parlays and parlay plus products dominate the what bettor's appetite is?
Yes, I believe so. I'm bullish on the parlay product. I do think it's a element of it or a faster product. There's an element. I think this suggested bets, getting bets coupled, pushing or nudging players, I think is a better term. Nudging folks to high hold product. I think I was just doing a report because we're looking at our own kind of parlay product and what else we can do. It's something like 42 to 45% of total revenue versus 20% of hold coming from the parlay. It's just wild in the states that kind of have it separated out. I think and it'll only get better. I think for a long time the European models and even our own sportsbook teams, there's always the term combi, which is just a parlay parlance for over here. Parlay betting hadn't been as popular in European markets and other international markets because you had a more I don't know, intelligent or you had a more mature or more mature sports, but Americans like a gamble. I mean, I think it's as simple as that. And I don't think there's this idea that we're sports bettors are suddenly going to get more educated and therefore move away from the parlay product. I think the other thing is possible. I think to Jason Robbins' comments about, we need to bring in folks that aren't currently betting. And I think the way that they're going to do that is to offer them an easier betting product that's more fun, that has more legs on it. I don't want to sit there and wait for the Bears to cover the money line. I want to watch and see if the running back has 57 yards and Justin Fields has 2 touchdowns. And I want to combine those and have things I'm rooting for throughout the game. So because of those elements, I certainly believe that the high hold product is not going anywhere.
I mean, my sister is a mom of 2 who has never watched sports, and she has FanDuel on her phone and plays parlays.
Same with my wife. I mean, my wife, she'll have a punt and she doesn't know anything, but she likes to put a couple bucks on certain elements. And I know her girlfriends do. My other buddies that don't do a lot of gambling, that's the way they bet, is just a couple of $2 to $5 low unit, low total unit on some ridiculous 12-legger because they pick every NFL game for the Sunday.
And it makes your whole Sunday entertaining for $5, that you have a sweat all day long. It'll be interesting. DraftKings just introduced progressive parlays. I'm kind of curious what the next iteration of this is. On that note, like the people that are bearish about this say you're going to kind of suck up all the lifetime value of bettors really quickly with these, high hold products. Is that the case? Or, I mean, the average bettor, like we were just talking about, it's like $5 and they kind of know that it's going to be $5 and you reload your account. how much do you buy into the idea that that this is something that is going to just sap the ecosystem too quickly?
Not a lot. I mean, I think looking at our own models, especially for Colorado and Ontario, I mean, we're still a pretty VIP driven sportsbook. So the way we approach the parlay product is a way to introduce sports betting to folks that aren't currently, in sports betting at the moment, or kind of an entertainment module for folks that aren't looking to find positive EV on and pick us off on slow lines and all these sharp bettors that we have to manage. So I don't think that that's the case. Of course, somebody on the CRM side or the finance could probably argue better. I think that the product and also the ways people are engaging with different sports books. I mean, I think we all know that sports books, most sports bettors are currently using more than one sports book that they're moving around. So if we can just capture them for a little longer, give them something that they've enjoyed, give them a win on some four-legger, I think ultimately they stay longer with one brand versus jumping to a different app over time. So I don't necessarily think that impacts, but again, our core kind of revenue is still driven by a large volume of VIP bettors. So we're a pretty traditional book still in that sense, that we don't have the largest volume of total bettors. We have a lot of volume from a small segment of our bettors.
All right. We are very quickly running out of time, unfortunately, but let's end with, we've talked about 2023. Do you have a bold prediction for 2024?
Oh. Well, I think I gave it earlier. I think 1.5 would be my over under. I think maybe the other thing we see is with a full year of reporting, maybe I'll just put a guess on where I think ESPN bet would be, because that seems to be the hot fun thing to talk about. On total percentage of market share. I think that what did Jay Snowden? He wants to be over 10. He wants to be
over 10 in a year. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's under. I don't know if that's bold, but I think it's that'll also be under 10% of market share when we talk again this time next year.
All right, that's book it in. We'll bring Betsson's Lance Agostino back November 2024 to see where we're at. Hold your feet to the fire. Thanks so much for joining us, Lance. And guys, be sure to keep tuning in every day for more insights and news from iGaming Daily.
SVC Media.